Good morning. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. If you will please bow with me. Father God, here we are again, thanking you for letting us get through another weekend. Thank you for all the wonderful things that you let each one of us enjoy. Be with us this coming week. It's going to be fun. Look after us, lead, guide, and direct us. Keep your hand on us. Thank you for everything. I ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. All right, let's go. Mr. Yates.
This is House Bill 123 again, and it's on modified structured rule on your list there. I got 3 pieces of paper on this since it's been back and forth. The original bill really would cover the problem very well, but then they came along with the original bill, LC 390857, and it was replaced by LC 390939S, and then Legislative Council sent the amendment here, which is AM 390093. But it's as they say, it's a simple proposition. It's to see to it that Mrs. Fletcher brought this to my attention after her daughter was killed when a trailer broke loose from a towing vehicle. And so happened that I had an experience with this when I was manager for Ford Motor Company in Colorado. I had a camper trailer. They had the one that sold me the trailer said there was a law that said you had to have a chain attached between the 2 vehicles. And I used that for several years, and it worked great, and that was good because I was going across the Continental Divide at 12,100 feet. So I guess common sense would tell me to quit fighting this and go back and get a copy of the bill in Colorado and pass it if we can. But I'm worried about people are still dying on the highway for lack of passing a bill that would restrain the second vehicle from the one being towed. So the original bill pretty well covered it, a safety chain. What it had in Colorado was it just said a chain would be attached between the 2 vehicles substantial enough to keep the vehicle being towed from leaving the other vehicle. That's how simple it was. So the original bill covered that pretty well, and also the substitute. But as I say, during the subcommittee meeting, I guess they came up with this thing, this amendment. But either way you look at it, I mean, I'd like to see one pass that would say that the vehicle being towed can't leave the other vehicle, so that This Ms. Fletcher brought it to my attention. She was a lady that had lost her daughter when the towed vehicle came loose from the towing vehicle. And that seemed like is pretty important to work on this and get something happening. So that's what I did.
Mr. Roberts, you had the question the first time. Are you fine?
I'm fine.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Yates.
No question.
No
Thank
question.
you. Thank you, committee. Chairman.
Ms. Tankersley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here again to bring to you House Bill 314. It's merging of the boards of cosmetology and barbering. It's on the top of page 2, and we're working off substitute LC 362723S. And I've said the purpose is to combine both of the boards of barbers and cosmetology, and this bill is a product of 2 years of discussions between the cosmetology and barber boards, and it's also upon recommendation of a House study committee that we did on professional licensing boards in 2013, and I served on this committee. This bill does move parts of the Barber Act into the Cosmetology Act, and it makes the language consistent between the two professions. There are a few new additions, all of which were agreed to by the boards, and I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you. Mr. Maxwell.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee. My bill's House Bill 341, a third one on the second page. What we're attempting to do here is give additional opportunity to persons wishing to become qualified inspectors in our local communities. Currently, the law requires state license in one of the trade areas and go through ICC. We're asking BOAG, which is the Builders Office Association of Georgia. They've been around since 1958. They're promoting professionalism and educational needs for inspectors in the 8 regions of North Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee. The inclusion of the BOAG certification will strengthen the current requirements while offering additional options to someone working in their local government to become a qualified inspector.
Any questions, Mr. Maxwell?
Good bill. Good bill.
Good bill. Good bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Nix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for 2 bills. They're both on the last page. House Bill 369, asking for that one again. This is the one that would change the way the East Blast is done so that an independent school district could not stop the East Blast from going forward. If they didn't have an agreement, it would simply be distributed based on the FTEs.
Any questions? No questions. Next one.
The next one is right below it, 374. This is the most simple bill we'll have this year. Just adds the word forestry to the list of equipment that could be exempted from ad valorem taxes while it's in dealer inventory.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here again this morning on the 4th page, HB 277, which deals with flooring samples so that we're consistent in the method that we put a use tax on those as far as their fair market value, not only soft carpet samples, but all hard surface samples. And I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Boy,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Boy, that's a real good bill. Sonny boy, come on down.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Pleased the committee had 3 bills. First one's on page 1, very bottom, HB 304. This is a bill that I presented to you before. It simply is clarifying statement of law that says if there's a mandatory probation sentence in a sentence for a criminal charge, that probation sentence comes to the end of all jail time. Example that I've given a couple of times is there's a person that could be convicted of 2 charges, 2 consecutive sentences, and the way it's been interpreted now, a person would be released from jail midway through their sentence to serve that probated sentence. We're simply saying that probated sentence has to come at the end. Second page.
Wait a sec. Anybody got any questions, Mr. Hightower, on 304? Next one.
All right, next one is second page, fourth down from the top. This deals with domestic relations, and what this is clarifying that in order for someone to collect interest on alimony payments, the judge has to order that or do it in a decree. The other way that it would be able to collect interest is if the person was 30 days past due on their payment.
Any questions? Next one.
All right, the last one is on page 3, 7 up from the bottom, HB 303. And this one's dealing with uninsured motorist coverage. And what this does is it's a penalty set in law against an insurance company that is found to be in bad faith and acting in willful bad faith against their own consumer. Currently, the penalty is 25% of any underlying policy. We're simply changing that to $25,000 or 25%, whichever one is greater. The purpose of that is to protect your lower end policies. It would be interpreted as a consumer protection bill for those with lower end policies.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I present House Bill 93, Modified Structure, page 2. It simply deals with data obtained using automated license plate readers. Simply states that if you have not been charged or are suspected of any crime, that your license plate data and whereabouts must be purged after 90 days.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you HB 81, which is on page 4, second bill under the structured rule, seeks to remedy the super lien problem in our state by putting a reasonable time restriction before the process can get started.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cantrell.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you today HB 209. It's on the front page, seventh one down under modified open rule. This is simply a 2-sentence amendment to the Special Needs Scholarship Act, which would clarify the way that parents are communicated with should they have a child with a severe learning disability or special need that would qualify them for this scholarship. And it is being supported by the Department of Education.
Any questions, Mr. Cantrell? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're on page 4, the 7th one down from the top, HB 520-520. It's right above the structured rule logo there. This is a bill to allow the folks in the proposed city of La Vista Hills in DeKalb County to vote in a referendum on a corporation.
Mr. Taylor, is there an amendment to that bill?
Yes. I believe Mr. Powell had an amendment.
Is it in this? Mr. Powell, let's go ahead and go through the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What happened was after this bill passed out of committee, they realized that some of the mapping information that had been in the bill was in error, and they prepared a rules amendment and asked me to bring it forth to the committee.
More than likely, what we'll do on that thing is, since it's just technical changes, we'll either do an amendment or a rules substitute. And just hang with me on that. Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Mr. Hamilton.
Mr. Chairman, the question I had was on the amendment. Would you prefer me to hold that?
You hold it and ask Mr. Powell in a minute. Just hold on to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Bruce.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Two bills, HB 514 on page 4, fifth item down, allowing the residents of South Fulton County the opportunity to decide whether or not they'd like to be a city of their own.
Any questions, Mr. Bruce, on 514? No questions. You want to do what's the other one?
And the other one, since I'm here, I'll ask again for HB 89, which allows the area to be, South Fulton County to be declared a drug-free zone.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Teasley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'd come to ask again for House Bill 126, which is the sixth one down under modified open rule, would put into code that it is specifically okay to have a GPS device mounted to your windshield.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dudgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Three bills today. First bill, the bottom of open rule on page 1, House Resolution 473 is a joint study committee about cybersecurity in Georgia. Second bill is the number 1 under modified structure on page 2, House Bill 34, the Georgia Right to Try Act for experimental access to drugs for terminally ill patients. And Mr. Chairman, I stopped by your office this morning. House Bill 502 is on the general calendar. It's not on the blue sheet. I would ask the committee to recommit House Bill 502 to education to make an important change.
Let's get that out of the way. Is I hear moved? Any opposed? It's back. What was your second bill?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. The second bill is House Bill 34. The first bill under modified structure on page 2, which is the Right to Try Act for experimental therapy for terminally ill patients.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 3 bills that I'd like to ask for this morning. The first one appears at the bottom of page 1, House Bill 264. It's the 5th from the bottom. This is a bill that comes to us by way of recommendation of the Georgia Child Support Commission, which would repeal the process of administrative legitimation and also strengthen and clarify existing procedures about administrative paternity. This is necessary because, unlike a paternity determination, a legitimation determination requires a finding of the best interest of the child, which by necessity would require judges' balancing of the evidence, and that's the reason for the request from the Child Support Commission.
Questions? No questions. Next bill.
The second bill, Mr. Chairman, is HB 405. It's number 6 from the top on page 2. This is a bill which is part of the State Bar of Georgia legislative agenda for 2015 and would require that all prenuptial agreements be in writing and attested to by at least 2 witnesses. And there's also some modernization and cleanup of this statute, which actually dates back to a time when a woman's right to contract and own property were severely curtailed, or as where I'm from in North Alabama, they refer to as the good old days.
What bill was that?
House Bill 405.
Okay, next one.
Mr. Chairman, also HB 367, I'll ask for that again, last but not least, and that's the bill that would create the fourth judgeship in the Western Judicial Circuit, and former state rep and Superior Court Judge Lawton Stevens is here to make sure that I do that right this morning, so I'll ask for that again.
Any questions? No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clark.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I bring before you again House Bill 278, and it's on page 1, second to last bill. And it's just simply transferring from the Department of Labor to the Department of Insurance and Fire Safety the responsibilities of the Public Employee Hazardous Chemical Protection Act. And I have letters from both departments saying they fully support the transfer.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Judge Donahue, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I bring to you HB 299. It's on the third page, 16th from the top. This is a transaction fee that in the state of Georgia, we already have this opportunity and this charge. It's just where we have certain companies like Gila, Georgia Industrial Loan Association, they are held to tight regulations, and this would just help them recoup the fee that you would choose to pretty much pay upon using a credit card, debit card, or electronic means.
Any questions? No questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 4, I bring to the committee HB 94, third one down under structured rule. Mr. Chairman, this is the bill that serves our military members. We find out that oftentimes military members deregister their vehicles, park them while they're deployed, and then when they get back, they face several years of taxes. This would alleviate them from being penalized. This was brought to be, Mr. Chairman, by a young Marine in my district who, upon serving 4 years in the Marines, 2 tours in Afghanistan, defusing IEDs, came back and was penalized for not paying his taxes on his motor vehicle for which he was never billed while he was deployed.
Wendell, you think we ought to do that one, right?
Next is under modified structure, middle of page 3, HB 255. I ask for that on behalf of Chairman Chokus, who claims to be tied up in traffic this morning, Mr. Chairman. This would put Georgia forestry products on an equal footing with other forestry products from around the country on state contracts.
Mr. Powell.
Just out of curiosity, when you brought the bill about the automobile in front of the committee, you referred to the young man as a serviceman. Why is it that he's a Marine when he comes in front of this committee?
That's just the way this world works, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tanner.
Mr. Chairman, I'm on the second page under modified structure, fourth up from the bottom, House Bill 114. It's a department bill for DDS. And also, Mr. Chairman, I believe that Chairman Wendell does have his amendment this morning.
Do the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment is really putting some due process in this difficult area about suspending of license, and it puts the issues back in the local courts to be sure that there's a proper notice given, that there's an opportunity for the person to come into court. If they doesn't come to court, there'll be a bench warrant issued because of their failure to appear, and then the department can suspend the license. So just to make sure there's a certain process followed in the beginning.
Any questions of the author or Mr. Willard? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. T. Rogers.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm asking today for HB 259, which is under modified open rule on the first page, 10 down. Basically, this is a department bill brought on behalf of the Department of Administration Services. It's the Georgia Business Act. Does three very simple things. The first one is it eliminates sunsets on a couple of things that we passed 3 years ago. They've been very successful. Second thing it does is it clarifies some language as to what's a Georgia business, what's also a small business. Then the third thing, it allows for agencies through the Department of Administration Services to contract for automobiles built in the state of Georgia without going through the formal bid process.
Ms. Abrams.
Sorry, Axel.
No other questions. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Comer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here to ask for House Bill 263, which is on page 3 under modified structure, Criminal Justice Coordinating Council bill that would allow that council to receive and disperse federal grants.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Clark.
Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring for your consideration House Bill 436. It's the top of the last page, page 4 top, House Bill 436. Physicians have a conversation with pregnant women at the beginning and the end of their pregnancy about AIDS testing. And this would call for the third trimester because many women are not seeking prenatal care early. And so this third trimester would catch that. And it would also add syphilis testing to the conversation because we have had more than 900 cases of syphilis in expectant women this last year. And this is brought to us by the AIDS Coalition and the Department of Community Health.
Any questions, Ms. Clark? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Beskin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have two bills today. House Bill 204 on page 3 under modified structure number 6. It would provide that an affidavit filed in opposition to a motion must be filed 1 business day before the hearing. It simply inserts the word business, so requires the filing 1 business day before a hearing. It also changes it so that in affidavits filed in opposition to a motion for summary judgment, it would require that those be filed 7 days prior to the hearing. It accomplishes that by extending the period of time before a hearing can be set from 30 days to 45 days.
Next one.
I'm here again for House Bill 297 under open rule regarding professional licensing boards. It allows a state professional board to contract with the National Association of Boards to process its examination applications.
Is that next one?
I'm sorry, that was my second bill. I'm sorry, I thought you had asked next bill. I had 2. House Bill 204, House Bill 297.
Is that all?
That's for today.
Okay. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
We might not be here the rest of the week after today. Ms. Dickerson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I come before you on House Bill 131, which is on page 2 under modified structure rule. This bill simply adds cyberbullying to the existing law. I ask for your favorable consideration of this bill. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, I bring to you House Bill 352 on the second page under modified open. This is a criminal procedure bill. What it does is it bring me the reciprocal provision similar to felony discovery to the misdemeanor discovery.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May it please the committee. I have two quick bills today, both under modified structure on page 3. First one is House Bill 280, which is a little more than halfway down the page. House Bill 80 does two things. Number one, it would require that someone convicted of sexual servitude under the human trafficking statute have to register as a sex offender. They currently do not. And number two, it clarifies for law enforcement and prosecutors that jurisdiction is concurrent when a sex offender moves from one county to the next and doesn't register as required by law.
Hold on. Any questions? Next one.
Next one is House Bill 196, which is on page 3. It's the fourth down from the top. This bill seeks to change section 17-8-57 to treat a trial error of a judge's comments consistent with how we treat every other error at trial on appeal.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Prince.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. House Bill 16 is on the first page, second rule up under modified open. House Bill 16 grants local school boards the authority to give magnet school students the opportunity to participate in high school athletics with two major criteria. One, that they participate in the area in which they're zoned for, and that their school does not offer such sport. Thank you, sir.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Chokus, did you crash land, or did you just... You weren't here, now you're here. Somebody's already presented your bills, but I sure would like to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You got a flat tire?
I'm glad we voted out that transportation bill, so hopefully make my trip a little bit quicker next time. Anyway, and I'm grateful for Chuck Williams, Representative Williams, in presenting or making the request for HB 255. It's a simple little bill. It simply ensures that Georgia lumber is used in state buildings paid for by Georgia citizens.
Any questions? Thank you. We're glad you made it. Y'all, if you wonder, he and I crashed. Yeah. Mr. Brockway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I have two for you today under open rule. The first one here is House Resolution 106, and it's simply an urging resolution urging Congress to keep its commitment to western states and turn federal lands back to them. I know it'll be hard to see, but all this red area over here is western states and land that's owned by the federal government. Some states like Utah and Nevada have about 70% of their land under control of the federal government, and it's just an urging resolution urging Congress to work with those states to rectify that situation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that one or move on to the next one, sir.
Next one.
On page 3, about top third of the page, under modified structure, House Bill 240. It does two things. It puts one member on the board, Department of Community Health Board, and requests that be a member of the State Health Benefits Plan. The second part would form a advisory committee, an unpaid, uncompensated advisory committee of folks in the state health benefits plan to advise the department on any potential changes to the state health benefits plan. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, sir.
No questions.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Dollar.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two bills today as well. Very top of the front page, HB 245. Quick reminder, this is the bill dealing with condo association fees. Georgia is currently one of 2 states in the nation that has a cap. This just changes that cap. I think the last time we did it was about 25 years ago. The other bill is second page, roughly halfway down, HB 540. This is just a small change in the code that created this committee. We need it so the House is in compliance.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, come to ask for 2 bills today. The first bill is House Bill 237, page 3, under modified structure. It simply extends the sunset on the angel investor tax credit. The bill called for a 5-year extension. There's a friendly amendment on your desk for a 3-year extension. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Next one.
The final bill is page 4, the very last bill, House Bill 464. This bill seeks to repeal 2 very seldom used income tax credits, and the third one would sunset it and cap it at $30 million, which is about the amount that's being claimed annually on that particular credit. Be happy to answer any questions.
No questions.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Mr. Shaw, how's your daddy?
He's doing much better, Mr. Chairman. Got him back home Saturday, so we appreciate the continued prayers.
Tell him we love him.
Thank you. He loves you too.
He does.
All of y'all.
We've been together a long time.
Page 2, House Bill 439 is the Georgia New Markets Jobs Act that I presented last week. Just helps lure more capital investments in underserved areas. Also, on the back page,
wait a second.
House Bill 461.
Wait a minute. What was the first one?
House Bill 439 on page 2 under modified open. 439.
Any questions? The peanut gallery's got me beside me telling what a good bill that is.
And then on the back page, House Bill 461. This is dealing with metal theft. You know, we had a very successful bill a few years ago, and this is just making some tweaks to deal with some other things that are being stolen in the state. So that's House Bill 461.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here again to ask for 1 bill. So on page 2, modified open, number 11 down, House Bill 476 would allow the Fulton Industrial Business District to be annexed into the proposed city of South Fulton.
Any questions, Mr. Flood? Mr. Willard.
I'll be quick. Mr. Flood, I thought that was done with a provision in the Constitution that sets that area aside as not being able to be annexed by anyone. Is that right?
That is correct. That's current law, but this would change.
You say law. I think it's a constitutional.
It's a constitutional, local constitutional amendment. This would allow for a referendum to repeal that constitutional amendment.
Doesn't that have to be by a referendum of like a House resolution as opposed to a bill?
According to Legislative Council, it's done with this bill.
Okay.
No more questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, first page, middle of the page, House Bill 21. In regard to transit authorities, all this does is repeal a population act from the 1950s and replace it with more current language. This is the exact same bill as House Bill 775, which passed the House by a very large margin last year. I have a second bill. On the very back page, page 4, under structured rule, House Bill 20. This is, again, in regard to low-income housing credits. This allows Georgia entities to allocate the low-income housing credits for Georgia partnerships according to Georgia law and not dependent on federal law.
Any questions? Thank you. Ms. Ballinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm here to ask for HB 253. It's about two-thirds of the way down on the first page. It basically makes it easier for real estate appraisers operating in the state to appeal to the Real Estate Commission. Currently, they can appeal to the federal. Just makes it easier for them. And the second bill is HB 268. It's halfway down on page 3. Clarifies mandated reporting.
You have a question, Mr. Setzer?
Representative Ballinger, appreciate HB 268. Isn't it true that 268, in the case of the mandatory reporting, for example, hypothetically, if there were a teacher who were accused, doesn't this allow the school leadership to talk to the teacher and or the student before they have to report this? I mean, it doesn't change the reporting timeline, but doesn't it put some common sense in that process?
What it does is it actually it mandates reporting if you know, like say in a school situation, there was actually a case out of Cherokee County, but it mandates reporting if you know right now through a Supreme Court decision, you don't have to report. It's not a requirement that you report if the abused child is not physically sitting in your classroom. So in other words, you could know, if you're a science teacher, you could know the English teacher is having a wildly inappropriate relationship with a 14-year-old, but you're under no mandate right now to report that. And this makes it so that you have to report that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's good to be before you once again to ask for HB 115 under modified open on page 1. With this bill, you will certainly allow some of your constituents to avoid foreclosure. I will also ask under modified structure on page 4, HB 515, which would incorporate the city of Tucker.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't see you, Rusty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Best for last, I guess. First page, first bill, House Bill 180. All it does is reduce the living requirement from 5 years to 2 years for people requesting to be a resident of the Georgia War Veterans Home.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, are these questions or bills? All right. Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Second page, under modified structure, House Bill 50, little monuments bill. And I'd like to put my name beside the House Bill 512 on the back page, Mr. Jasper's bill.
Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 2, House Bill 510, sets up the framework for the Sports Commission Fund. Also, House Bill 511, right after that, is a technical change that clarifies what pharmacists and technicians can do with these remote machines.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Modified open rule, third from the bottom on the first page, HB 271. This bill allows the state or local school board, simply gives them the authority to approve charter schools on the location of our community businesses.
Any questions, Mr. Setzler?
Also, Mr. Chairman, if I could, on page 3, second from the top, HB 182. HB 182 limits the circumstances where forced blood draws can be taken from people to vehicular homicide or serious injury by motor vehicle. Reestablishes to where we were, have been for most of the last 50 years.
No questions. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Get to the page. Representative Tankersley bill, House Bill 314. I'd like to put my name by it. Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, the third from the top, House Bill 194, an early voting bill. And do you want me to discuss the amendment at this point?
Yes.
All right, I have on your desks, members of the committee, an amendment to House Bill 110. This is an amendment that is supported by the author, Chairman Roberts. I'll also state that there's several people in this room as well as in the Senate that would like this amendment. It basically does three things. This is dealing with a new type of aerial explosive consumer fireworks in the state of Georgia. First, it just simply makes two changes and uses current federal law. It also kind of puts belts and suspenders, if you will, on clarification of nonprofits, that the money has to go to a nonprofit. You can't use the nonprofit's name without them being involved. And then the third change is it further limits these temporary structures to 2 per county as long as it meets the criteria set forth by the fire department. And the attempt there is to give preference to the people that put full facilities here, and they just don't want, there's some other states that have done this, and they have as many as 1,000 of these around the state. So it's really a public safety issue, and that's what the amendment does.
Any questions on the amendment? Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hamilton, I'm for most all of the amendment, but I'm conflicted on the non-profit, why that's kind of a carve-out. I've always thought profit was a good thing in our society, and I don't know why we're favoring a non-profit over somebody that would be involved in what maybe will be a legal commodity. Do we do that with any other commodity?
Excellent question, and let me tell you what I understand coming in late on the process is that right now businesses under this new first of all, this is a new type of fireworks. So any current fireworks that are the tents and the things that are out there. Nonprofits can still use all those. You could have 500 in a particular location of the current fireworks. This only deals with the new type, which are the aerial explosive, and they're deemed to be much more dangerous. And so the idea is that we're going to limit just those to 2. And if a nonprofit wants to participate in that, they can. All we're simply doing is making sure that the money actually goes to the nonprofit. That's my understanding. These are just the temporary structures that are being done out there. So nonprofits, profits can still do all the other things. This is just dealing with that new type of aerial explosive fireworks.
One quick follow-up. Is there any other product that we have made legal to sell that we made legal to sell only by a nonprofit then?
I'm not
that
aware
you're
of
aware
that.
of. I'm not aware of.
Any other questions, Mr. Hamilton? Mr. Setzler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the friendly amendment. I certainly am very, very supportive of HB 110. My only question to the author of the amendment was on line 28, the limitation to 2 licenses per county. You know, that seems perhaps passes the common sense test in a county of 5,000 total population, but if you're in, say, Gwinnett County on the other side of the metro from me with 800,000 citizens, I just don't know that 2 licenses in Gwinnett County makes sense, or 2 licenses across Cobb County with 700,000 people. I wrestle with that fixed number that wouldn't have flexibility in the vast diversity of counties.
Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the questions. My understanding that currently they can, under the current fireworks that they have right now, they can set up as many of these as they want to. There's no restriction on that. All we're doing is limited this new type of dangerous fireworks that is coming to, that this bill tends to address. In other words, it's the new aerial explosives, and they're deemed to be dangerous, and so they're just trying to limit that to no more than 2. I can't tell you where the number 2 came up. It was just thought that was a reasonable number because of the safety requirements that are involved.
Mr. Roberts, would you like to jump in any time?
Kind of enjoying this. Mr. Chairman, as we move through this, there's been a lot of talk and discussion about how do we allow these full-line fireworks and how do we restrict them. I'm okay with this amendment as far as moving forward to make sure that once we get it over to the Senate, we can continue to have this discussion. No. I said allow.
Anybody else want to comment on the fireworks bill, the amendment? To let you know that for it to make its way out onto that floor, if this amendment doesn't pass, I ain't gonna let it out. It's real simple. Bill's on the floor. This amendment will be a supplemental calendar amendment for today. If that lets you know you're going to have a supplemental calendar for today, that is that. And I had a nod of the head. Okay. I tell you what I'm going to, when I do the supplemental calendar, you be sure and remind me. Mr. Willard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the second page, under modified structure rule, House Bill 72, the committee may remember 2 years ago we passed an extensive bill, House Bill 78, which dealt with abuse to elderly and disabled persons. This is a follow-up cleanup of some things that we have discovered since then that need to be improved upon in this legislation, and therefore we have House Bill 72.
Ms. Cooper.
Got me in trouble. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the fourth page, I would like to ask for a House bill at the top, third down, House Bill 505. It's a rewrite of the Physical Therapist Practice Act. And I'd also like to put my name by the first bill, House Bill 436, the HIV syphilis testing bill.
Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, House Bill 279, it is the judicial pay raise bill. It provides for a flat across-the-board pay raise for the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals, and it enacts a state supplement for district attorneys, public defenders, and Superior Court judges. I would also like to ask for HB 375, which is also on page 3, which permits a one-time and a 5-year period plea of nolo contendery for a canceled, suspended, or revoked registration. If this is not enacted, then anybody who pleads nolo will automatically be suspended, and that's the current law. And I would like to put my name by HB 396. Which is on page 4 under structure.
What was your second bill number?
375. It's third from the bottom on page 3.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes, sir. We just wanted to place my name by House Bill 240 on page 3.
Ms. Dempsey.
House Bill 288 brought forward the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities to add 2 more members to the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under modified structure, House Bill 106. This is the Department of Transportation's update bill. Basically deals with disposition of property.
Ms. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 253 on page 1 under modified open. And I'd like to place my name by House Bill 255. Thank you.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 396, I believe Chairman Powell just asked for it. This is a bill that does 2 things. It allows our tax commissioners to not to have to levy penalties on the full amount of the bill. Currently, people are prepaying with updated computer systems. They're getting partial payments, but if it's after the penalty date or the due date, they're by law are having to charge the full penalty amount on a property tax bill by law, even though there are current, partial payments made. The second thing just clarifies at the local level that you can't interfere with the officer levying, in a levying or structure or hindering the execution of a levy. We're doing that because, as you know, the state is phasing out the property tax. We'll make it very clear that the local officials, you can't hinder them in any way.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 3 at the very bottom, House Bill 416.
is the identifier bill. All parties are in agreement with the bill as written. All parties are in agreement with the bill as written. They're on the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to urge your consideration of two measures. House Bill 115 by Mr. Mitchell, the Right to Cure Act, and House Bill 131, the End to Cyberbullying by Representative Dickerson.
Ms. Abrams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for consideration of H.R. 303 by Representative Buckner, which would expand the teaching of comprehensive civics education in our schools, and HB 89 by Representative Roger Bruce to continue drug-free commercial zones within the state of Georgia.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 1, first bill in the modified open, House Bill 3. This has been referred to as a Todd Gurley bill. It would simply add to current statute a prohibition against enticing a student athlete to do something that they're not supposed to do. Also, if I may, Mr. Chairman, a second bill on page 3, second from the bottom under modified open, House Bill 377. This bill simply clarifies current law that our courts can contract with companies to collect people who contract with companies to help collect fines that people fail to pay.
Mr. Pro Tem, you want to do 477? You want to do 477?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask for House Bill 477, which offers one more option for local governments to dispose of an abandoned road. It's supported by ACCG and GMA.
It's on the front page, number 4.
Front page open rule.
Okay. Today's supplemental calendar. Under open, HB 477. Any opposed? It's under modified open, HB 16. Any opposition? Modified open, HB 89. Any opposition? Under modified open, HB 253. Any opposition? It's under modified open, HB 476. Any opposition? Under modified structure, HB 514. Any opposition? Under modified structure, HB 515. Any opposition? And I thought about it, and what we're going to do on HB 520. We're going to just have them treated as an amendment in its technical stuff, but I don't see any reason to come up with another bill number. So you'll have your amendment to 520 with all the different locators, and those are the numbers. It's 4 or 5 pages of that. That's going to go as a rules amendment up to 520. Well, yeah. It would be to 520.
So 515 will be an amendment to 520.
No.
520 will be an amendment to 515.
No. 515 is just on there. 514, 515 are on the supplemental. 520 will have the amendment here. All right. The amendment is for HB 520. Do I hear a motion to approve the amendment? Any opposed? All right. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question earlier was just, do we know what that amendment change is? Is it taking the existing map that was approved?
It's my understanding that it's the existing map as approved by that the people that did the bill messed up on the numbers to where it went. This puts it back to what Governmental Affairs approved.
Right, and I just want to verify that I was on that 5-member special committee that did that, and we had a very distinct, the only way we're going to do that was a map. So this is taking it back to that map as approved then, is what I understand you're saying.
Again, it's from what I understand, it's a scriber error.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to verify, because I know that if we change the map, it would cause some other problems. I just want to make sure.
Yes,
thank you very much.
It should be no change to the map. If it is, I'll stand up and we'll do something funny. And I did that out of order again. I'm getting good at that. HB 520 under modified structure. Do I hear a move? All right. Any opposition? It's on. It's on with. Do I hear again another move for the amendment? All right. So we have a rules amendment to 520. Okay, under structured, HB 20. Yes. Under structured, HB 277. Under modified structure, HB 106. Y'all ain't got anything to do tonight anyway, do you? Okay. I'm going to give one more. HB 255 under modified structure. All right. I'll give you one more. Yeah, 13's a good number. Under under modified structure, HB 215. Any opposed? Okay, that's the supplemental count. All right.
Yep.
Mr. Goley. Okay. You do first, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to move pursuant to the rule for House Bill 514, House Bill 515, and House Bill 520 that debate be limited on each of those bills to no more than an hour, inclusive of the opening and close. Inclusive of the opening and close for all three of those pieces of legislation.
Do I hear an objection? No objections. That's on there. All right, on House Bill 215, the last one we put on there, there's an amendment offered by Mr. Williams Jacobs, and then I have no idea what that signature is, but Taylor. Mr. Taylor, would you like to stand up and yell out to the crowd what that does? The amendment.
$215. Yes, sir. Give me one. Hang on. Oh, it's the it adds a penny sales tax to DeKalb County, but it reduces the host allotment. Basically, it reduces property tax and offsets.
Okay. Do I hear a move on the amendment? Any opposition? It's on there. All right. Now we're going to set the calendar for Wednesday. HB 259 under modified open. Any opposition? Modified open HB 278. Modified open HB 304. It's modified open HB 341. Any opposition? Modified open HB 347. Any opposition? So modified open HB 352. It's modified open HB 439. under open rule. HB 103.
Move.
Any opposition? Modified structure, modified structure. Any opposition?
It's 103, 103, modified structure.
Anybody got any idea how many that is? Oh, we're going to go a long way then. Under modified structure, HB 72.
Move.
Any opposition? Under modified structure, HB 114. All right, now that one has an amendment by Mr. Willard and Mr. Earhart. AM 390104.
Move.
Okay, we have a move to approve the amendment. Any opposition? All right, so it's on, the amendment will be on the desk, and 72 is on the calendar. HB under modified structure, HB 123. It's on. Under modified structure, HB 237. There's an amendment to that one. It's AM 340678. Mr. O'Neill.
Chairman, the amendment just reduces the sunset period from 5 years to 3, which is more consistent with having us review outcomes.
Okay, you've heard 237 is on. You've heard the amendment. Move on. Is anybody opposed? All right, it's on the floor. Under modified structure, HB 204. Under structured. HB 396. Any opposition? Does that telephone tell you which one of these we're talking about, Mr. Knight? Okay. We have also, and I don't know if we've done it yet or not, but we talked about the amendment to 110. Did we move on that? No, we did not. You've heard the amendment for 110, Mr. Hamilton's amendment. Do I hear any opposition? Okay, 110 is on the supplemental for today, or I don't know, it might be on, we might have to hold it. I think it's on the regular thing. So this amendment will be on your desk as a rules amendment. That's it.
I may have to speak again.
Oh, back in. Whoa, 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 whoa. Mess up. Back in. We've got the supplemental calendar for today, and we put 477. I understand it's under open. It'll be moved to modified open.